Hello. Our story begins inside a cantina in the Mid-Rim. The war had brought the clones and the Jedi to this quadrant of the galaxy, and after successfully deterring a Separatist invasion, Anakin was bringing Rex to the Sabacc tables for some relaxation. Ahsoka was resting after the siege, and Skywalker was ready for a break of his own. When he was a boy, Sabacc was the way to do it. As a slave, he'd gamble away pieces and parts so he could build his racer. Now he was going to throw a couple hundred Republic credits into the pot and win something for Rex. He and Rex sat down with a couple civilians. Part of doing this was to normalize or humanize the Jedi and clones for civilians of the city. There were fortress walls built around the city, and the Republic won. Now the people were going back to their normal lives and experiencing a sense of freedom. Anakin and Rex played around, and every time Anakin got his cards, he showed them the Rex, pointing out what each meant. On the first try, Anakin was able to secure himself a prime Sabacc. Rex laughed to himself, telling Anakin that he wanted to give it a shot. They flipped the chairs around, and as they did, the cantina owner dropped a holopad on the table. From it exploded an important holo message. Do you like Sabacc? Do you like playing the classic Star Wars game with your friends? Well, Sabacc is among one of the many things you can get with hyperspace props. From a variety of credits, Sabacc dice, Pazzic decks, or the various Sabacc decks, you can join your friends in your favorite universe. Choose from a variety of New Republic credits, Sabacc, poker chips, or Imperial credits. Here I have the Corellian Spike deck, but there are various others that you can choose from, such as the Coruscant Naboo, the Solo Corellian variation, and the Kessel Sabacc deck, inspired by Star Wars Outlaws, which you can pre-order right now on the Hyperspace Props website. The quality of these props is insane. I personally love them because after having played Sabacc on Outlaws with you guys on Twitch for several hours, trying to beat a frog.
Oh, you got Sabacc? I got Prime Sabacc. I got Prime Sabacc. Dub! Get out of here, bro.
It was awesome getting my hands on the physical deck. Each of the credits, dice, or cards I have here feel like they're straight from the universe we all love. So use my 10% discount Patrol to get yourself some hyperspace props so you can take your friend's Corellian YT freighter with the Lando cheating device and win their credits too. Get your hyperspace props down below and I'll see you at the Sabacc table in your local cantina. Watch the table open up and he was thrown a duo of cards. With a yellow 3 and an orange 1, he started searching for a yellow 1. He placed the chip down and took from the yellow pile, finding a 5, and so he put it back down. The table rolled around to each of the players and eventually came back to Rex. He pulled from the table again and got nothing good. Only another 3, so he put it back into the pile. Rex watched the other players get confident with their final pulls, before he dug back into the yellow pile himself and pulled out the 1 he needed. Without reacting, he placed the 3 back down, and when the game rolled around, each of the other members played their various Sabacc duos, before Rex slapped a prime Sabacc on the table and won. He tossed the credits into the pile and told them that this one was on the Republic, before standing up and looking to Anakin with a smile. He told General Skywalker that he wanted to get his own set of Sabacc for the men and himself. Anakin shrugged, suggesting that it could be arranged. Captain and General walked through the streets of the city. Everything was back to normal, and they prepared to leave the system. As they were walking back, Admiral Yularen contacted them and informed them that a Separatist Sith shuttle landed on the outskirts of the city, out near a local mountain range. Yularen told them that it was around 30 clicks away from the city gates. Anakin told Yularen to send them an LAAT to take them there. Once they got to the gunship, it picked them up and sped towards the Separatist vessel. It was the second year of the Clone War. The clones were all equipped with their Phase 1 armor, and the Jedi were finally making a push into Separatist territory. A war that looked so bad from the beginning started to look up. They were closing in on victory, at least as well as it seemed. Anakin thought about the post-war era. What would it bring for them? Would they become a police force? Would they maintain balance, or would they stay Jedi generals and work on maintaining order through force? It was all a question in his mind, but something that made Skywalker wonder more. What would become of him? So much of his personal comfort came from being a Jedi general. If the war ended, would he become a monk like Obi-Wan, or would he strive for something different? As a Padawan, he couldn't do much outside of Obi-Wan's direction during a time of peace. Now he'd have the opportunity to determine his own future. Anakin's metallic hand clasped the side of the bar inside the LAAT as he looked over to Rex, who started to read out what it was. He said this was a Separatist shuttle from Sereno. Chances are Dooku sent a diplomat or something to the planet. It was weird. They hadn't seen Dooku or the Separatists do anything like this before. Perhaps it was just a miscommunication, but no one was really buying that scenario. The LAAT slid to the ground, and the 10 or so troopers with Anakin and Rex ferried out of the ship. Rex took point with General Skywalker and gave out orders, telling the men to fan out and see if there were any Separatists around. According to the long-range scanner, this ship wasn't damaged. The clones all raised their blasters and moved around some rocks as they closed in on the ship. Rex called out, demanding to know if anyone was out there. The ramp to the ship opened up, and Anakin walked towards it. He raised his Jedi weapon from his belt but did not ignite it. He looked around and stepped over some rocks and slid between a couple buried boulders. His eyes scanned everything and turned back towards the men, telling them to keep their distance. It appeared that this ship was not occupied. He stepped slowly towards the ramp and looked in. He could see a hologram pod in the middle, and it ignited, sending out a red transmission. Anakin looked at Count Dooku. He smiled with glee, telling young Skywalker that they had potential for a true rivalry, but his sole role as a Sith apprentice would not be thwarted by an individual hell-bent on achieving ego through war. Confusion washed over Anakin. Is that all Dooku really thought of him? Anakin felt a chill roll through his body as he heard what Dooku said next. He said that Skywalker's time as a Jedi Knight had expired. It was time for the era of the Chosen One to come to an end. Anakin yelled out, telling everyone to run as he turned back and started out of the ship. An explosion ripped through the ground, blasting Anakin out of the ship and igniting a line of fuel to cover Anakin's back as he was flung into the rock walls, breaking several bones in the process. Smoke and fire filled the air between him and his men. Anakin couldn't feel anything but a burning sensation crawling across his skin. It sank deep into his body as he wailed in pain. His metallic hand stretched forward, fuel from the Separatist vessel dripping through the cybernetics of his arm, causing it to stop working as it fell limp on the ground. Anakin's bare hand was burnt to the bone, and he was crying out for his men to save him. Rex ran through the smoke as another explosion rippled across the ground, sending Rex out of Anakin's view and into the smoke cloud. The men who came with Anakin were either killed in the blast or badly hurt by the explosion. The LAAT pilots who came with them popped out of their cockpits and ran forward into the smoke, removing General Skywalker from the wreckage, gently holding his burnt body and placing him onto a stretcher. They called for reinforcements as they tried their best to tend to the rest of their men. While those who weren't killed were injured, their injuries were not nearly as bad as Skywalker's. When the next two LAATs landed, they found an incapacitated Anakin. Without the influence of the dark side coursing through his veins, he was on death's doorstep, and if he didn't get immediate medical treatment, he would die. Anakin's body was terribly burned, and he was first rushed back to the flagship. Ahsoka wasn't made aware of this development, but the clones inside the Venator rushed to the hangar bay and made sure Skywalker had plenty of room to get from the dropship to the medical bay. The clone medics, along with Kix, were doing everything in their power to make sure that Anakin was staying alive. Ironically, to keep Skywalker alive, they were ODing Anakin over and over again, pumping his veins with bactistins. Sure, some of the men at the wreckage could have used it, but they were almost guaranteed to survive the ordeal. Anakin kept fading in and out of consciousness. He saw Rex get blown into the smoke. He saw a couple of his men killed on the ground. He saw Kix by his side. He could hear the murmuring of the LAAT as it flew back to the flagship. He also felt the cooled halls of the Venator and the chilling sensation of the Bacta tank, but it was all misconstrued for him. Admiral Yularen contacted General Kenobi, who was in a nearby star system, as well as informing the Jedi High Command of the incident. Yularen wasn't worried about the leadership responsibilities, but people close to Anakin needed to know that General Skywalker was likely going to die. He also did this because Republic High Command needed to be informed of this trick. No one had seen the Separatists use this battle tactic before, and if they were targeting Jedi leadership, it could not be allowed to happen again. When Ahsoka woke up, she walked herself to the bridge, without a worry in her mind. As she entered, she found Rex in a cast, with a dent in his armor. He wasn't wearing his helmet because it was completely shattered. His eyes looked over to Ahsoka, as she asked why she wasn't informed of the battle. Rex told her it wasn't a battle, there wasn't any battles. She then realized that something was wrong. Where was Anakin? Yularen came in from the other side of the bridge and told her that they were misled by a Separatist ship. The vessel blew up, killing 3 men, injuring the other 8, including Rex. General Skywalker was right next to the blast when it went off. truthfully speaking, according to Rex, who cut in, the injuries wouldn't have been as bad had the fuel not leaked onto his body. Her eyes watered as she firmed her voice and asked where her master was. Rex said he'd take her there, as he stepped forward with a limp. On their way to the medical bay, he explained everything he knew. Anakin was stable, but he was in a medically induced coma. He likely wouldn't survive this ordeal. No ordinary man would survive it, and chances are, despite his unlikely odds of survival upon impact, he probably wouldn't live through the night. Once they got to the medical room, Ahsoka walked up to the bacta tank. Anakin's body was shredded, burnt to a crisp. His metallic arm was removed and placed on a table outside the tank. There were tubes placed across his body and a mask covering his face. Ahsoka walked over to the metallic arm and felt it. Despite hours having passed by, it was still warm to the touch. She could see the damage done to it, and couldn't believe what had happened. Rex was speaking to her in the background, but it was fading out. Ahsoka's ears were ringing, and she could only feel her heart thumping in her chest. Her hand fell on the table and she held herself up. Ahsoka looked over to her master, and a tear slipped from her eyes. She couldn't believe it. She should have been there. Ahsoka wished that she didn't let that slip out of her mouth, because Rex corrected her. If she was there, everything would have been worse. He was glad that she wasn't present, because they couldn't afford to have her in a bacta tank right next to General Skywalker. She should be happy she was here. For now, they would all be here by Anakin's side. There was no reason to make the situation worse. There was nothing she could have done to change any of this. For now, patience was all they could afford. Before the sun fell over the system the fleet was protecting, General Kenobi arrived from his own campaign. They had pretty much won the battle. Commander Cody could finish up the rest of the assault for him. This gave Kenobi a chance to come to Anakin's side and be there for his former student. Obi-Wan ran through the flagship and into the medical bay, where he found Ahsoka slumped over in a chair, and Rex was leaning against the wall on the ground. There were a couple of other troopers, ones close to Anakin, that were also here. Among them were Fives, Jesse, and Kix. Obi-Wan walked over to Ahsoka and moved her head gently so her neck wasn't at a 90-degree angle. He asked Rex for a status update, and it was given. Obi-Wan frowned. He hated seeing Anakin in this condition. There was a continuous fear that Anakin would die this evening, and everyone was gathered in here to keep their eyes on their general, and be here for him if he did die. Admiral Yularen was inside the medical bay, but he left shortly before Obi-Wan's arrival. Kenobi told the men that if Anakin survived the night, he would like to escort him back to the Jedi Temple, hoping that Master Yoda or the Council could help him with a healing ritual. Rex was understanding of this and told General Kenobi that he would get it ready immediately. Obi-Wan shook his head, telling him not to leave his friend. Obi-Wan would arrange everything. Inside of his own mind, Anakin was in a dark trap, consumed by a lightless abyss. Without hope or compassion, he had no understanding of what had happened. There were flashes of the event, but all he knew was he was sleeping. There were dreams that passed by, and some of the words spoken outside of his chambers were slipping into his mind. In a weird way, he knew he was in a coma, or that something had happened, but he couldn't really consciously recognize it. He had crafted his own dream world in his mind. There was the temple and Padme's apartment. He could see Jedi playing in the courtyard, and next to him was his wife. They were openly together. Around him were his closest friends, Palpatine, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. There was no war. There were no more enemies, and the vibe was good. Anakin was walking around, blissfully unaware of his circumstances. Because Ahsoka, Rex, and Obi-Wan were around him in the real world, he could see them talking to each other inside of his mind, but he could not really conceptualize what they were actually saying to each other or to him. In the morning, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan walked to a light cruiser that was docked underneath the Venator, and they left for the planet of Coruscant. The Jedi Council had made room for Anakin, and they were awaiting his arrival. They had gone through the archives to try and help him with his injuries. The trip through hyperspace didn't see much change. The men of the 501st did not come with them to Coruscant. Upon their arrival to the Jedi Temple, they were greeted by Oppa Rancisis, Yoda, and Plo Koon. They, along with some clones who had been protecting the Jedi Knight, brought Skywalker into the temple and placed him into a separate room from the rest of the Order. Ahsoka came in with the council members and was permitted to join them because this involved all of them. The whole council was brought back to Coruscant to assist in this. Even though there was a risk that Anakin could die in the night before returning home, all of them wanted to be here to help him. Each of the Jedi gathered around the bacta tank and saw how terrible the condition was. His skin was ripped, and his lungs could hardly breathe on their own. All the medical diagnoses showed a man that shouldn't be alive, surviving. And this was proof more than anything else that Anakin was the chosen one. Initially, there was fear from the council that Anakin had pulled a Maul, survived purely out of his own hatred. But unlike somehow Maul returned, Anakin did not delve into the dark side to survive. He was alive because his heart had a stake in the galaxy. His soul was bound to each and every living being, and he was kept alive by pure determination and the will of the Force. Yoda gathered the Jedi here. Each of the counselors had come and had been briefed on this. Using direct Force heal wasn't against the code per se, but it was seen as a barbaric way of handling things. It was something for broken Jedi, individuals not raised within the walls of the temple. What the Jedi would be doing here was an offshoot of Force heal, a more dogmatic but advanced version of doing it. Yoda tapped his cane on the ground and everyone around him got on the ground, their legs crossed and their arms outstretched, planting their hands firmly on the shoulders of those around them. Yoda called Obi-Wan and Ahsoka to the front, asking that they plant their hands on the tank itself, and allow the members closest to them to place their hands on their shoulders. They did, and once they were seated, Yoda began the ritual. He spoke from memory. His voice spoke firmly, and with precise dictation. He called upon the Force to be their guide, and the guide of Anakin Skywalker. Each Jedi here had come together to celebrate the life of Anakin, and if the Force was to call him into its arms, then that would be his destiny. If not, then they would receive the boy they had watched over for more than a decade. Following Yoda's little speech, the Jedi didn't move for hours. It was very challenging on Ahsoka. She was emotionally unstable, but being with Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Plo, she felt a sense of relief. The purpose of this collective Force heal was to reach into Anakin's mind and be there by his side. Whether he chose life or death, they would be around him. It was a way of allowing the individual and the Force to choose the direction. The Jedi were only helping Anakin maintain stability. He would be the one to pull through if he wanted to or not. The day slipped into night, and again, the sun rose on Coruscant. The Jedi hadn't moved in over 24 hours, and at the milestone of the 25th, Anakin's eyes opened. He could feel the pain in his arms, legs, torso, shoulders, hand, head, and feet. Everywhere there was burning, and he looked at his friends and the Jedi Council. Where was he? Like an avalanche, all the memories of the explosion and his burning crushed down on him. He was blindsided by it. Anakin scanned the room, and everyone looked to each other with a sense of joy and pride. He had survived. Skywalker wasn't going to be released from the Bacta tank for a couple weeks. In the meantime, Plo would take care of Ahsoka's training, and Yoda would watch over Anakin's physical therapy. The 501st would continue without their general, and Rex would be promoted to commander to take care of things from there. The first day Anakin came out of the Bacta tank, everyone realized that he could no longer talk. So he was given a new voice box, one that was kind of metallic, but it was fixed up to sound more human. Padme was kept in the loop, thanks to Obi-Wan and Yoda. The only reason Yoda did this is because he knew Anakin and Padme were friends. Anakin and Yoda spent a lot of time with each other during this time, especially before Anakin was taken out of the Bacta tank. Yoda would meditate, eat, and sometimes sleep in the medical room, not wanting to leave Anakin all alone in the room with medical droids. It was a bit overprotective, but Yoda was genuinely concerned for Anakin, especially after he survived his whole ordeal and chose life. The first thing Anakin said to Yoda was Dooku ordered that explosion. It was a very hard to hear sentence, but Yoda feared that Dooku was behind the attack. With confirmation about that, he immediately wanted Dooku to be taken out of the war. Despite how hard it had been to maintain a war against his former pupil, his student was truly gone. Hoping the boy he trained would somehow return was foolish. Now it was time for the Order to end this war in a non-Jedi-like way. Ignoring the war crimes created by either side, it was time for this to end. Yoda was so heartbroken over the entire thing, and now Anakin would never be the same, because Yoda had allowed his own attachment to his former student cloud his judgment. While Yoda was trying to figure out the next course of action, especially while he was watching over Anakin, Palpatine was visiting Dooku on Sereno. Sidious was fuming. He knew that Dooku was behind this, and depending on what Lord Tyrannus said, would determine if he lived or died. Ironic, isn't it? Because Ventress hadn't been betrayed yet, Dooku was prepared in case his master decided to attack him. Tyrannus greeted his master, who demanded answers for Skywalker's assassination attempt. Dooku told him that Sidious said he wanted a powerful ally, correct? Palpatine listened. Dooku was ensuring that Skywalker was the right pupil for him. If he died, then he wouldn't be worth his time. However, if Skywalker survived, then he was proof that the Sith path was one worthy of him, a survivor that was capable of using the dark side to live and overcome tragedy. Sidious hissed, turning around and telling Dooku that Skywalker nearly died, and because Dooku was so insistent on ensuring Skywalker joined the Sith, he nearly disrupted the entire status quo of everything. This was a choice that should have been made by himself. Palpatine pointed forward and told him that there would be consequences for this. His assassin, Asajj Ventress, would need to be killed to prove his loyalty. It was clear that Tyrannus was not responsible enough to have an assassin as it was. His desire to follow the rule of two had blindsided his vision for a Sith future, one that was a galactic empire, not squabbling between master and apprentice. Dooku was jarred by Palpatine's response, and he worried for what Asajj would do. She answered that question for him when she flung down from the rafters and attacked Palpatine. Sidious quickly avoided the strike by igniting his lightsabers. He snarled, betrayed by Dooku. Shame he didn't use that explosion to kill him. Skywalker wasn't ready to kill Dooku, but Palpatine wouldn't have any problem gutting these two opponents. Tyrannus and Asajj knew that to win this fight, they needed to focus on the duel. If Palpatine got distance away from them, then he could win this fight by simply overwhelming them with the Force. Dooku and Asajj got to each other's sides and charged in. Sidious Sith howled across the chambers and they defended themselves. The weight of his blades allowed them to both see how daunting this fight would be. But Asajj, like Dooku, had curved hilts, allowing them to be more maneuverable and aerodynamic in their assault. Red lightsabers covered the chambers of Dooku's castle as the Count of the Planet whistled. Dooku drove his weapon into Palpatine's defense, as Palpatine spun away, clashing with Asajj and throwing her backwards. He lifted his blades and thrusted them into Dooku's assault, before Palpatine felt the shock. He didn't sense it because they were clankers. Magna Guards surrounded Palpatine and started an unrelenting assault, giving Asajj and Dooku a chance to swing wherever there was an opening. This fight showed off Palpatine's mastery of a lightsaber. He blasted lightning over the floor and electrocuted the droids, but Dooku and Asajj leapt over the electricity and jabbed at Sidious. He stopped to defend himself, striking back, trying to ensure his own survival by any means necessary. His lightsabers avoided his opponents before trying to get the kills, but it failed, with proper defenses from them. The droids, who weren't shut down by Palpatine, engaged again, some of them with smoke slipping out of them. Sidious leapt over Asajj and struck at her back, but it was stopped when he was electrocuted by a Magna Guard staff. Tyrannus shot electricity at Sidious and he blocked what he could, before he was surrounded by another couple Magna Guards, who jabbed at him. Even with two lightsabers, he wasn't able to stop all these opponents at once. Dooku jabbed, but it was blocked, as Sidious held his blades above his head. With electricity coursing through his back, he elected to use the pain of the electrocutions to fill him as he defended the strikes that could kill him. As a Sith, it was a solid strategy. As any other type of duelist, it was a failing one. But Sidious maintained his strength, blocking the two Sith and taking the hits from the Magna Guards. He slipped between Asajj and Dooku, slashing Ventress's calf, but not cutting it off. Dooku watched her reel and shot more electricity at his master, who blocked it with an X, sending it back towards his apprentice. Dooku was covered in electricity, just as another Magna Guard stabbed Palpatine in the back, but Palpatine continued throwing that electricity back into Tyrannus as his body was consumed, burning him up and killing him. As his body dropped to the ground, Ventress swung at Palpatine, cutting his hand off in the process. He swung back around and cut down the Magna Guard before striking at Asajj. She slid away from the strike and jabbed at Palpatine again. He blocked it, when the two final Magna Guards, instead of hitting him with their staves, grabbed him by the neck with their metallic hands. He was pulled backwards, as a neck snap could be heard, and it gave Ventress a chance to extinguish his life. With Sidious and Tyrannus dead, Asajj needed to find direction. Where was it? Leading the Separatists? Returning to Dathomir? She no longer knew, but General Grievous was now her biggest threat. Inside the Jedi Temple, Anakin was walking next to Master Plo Koon and Yoda. Anakin was getting his land legs back, and due to the extensive burns, he was struggling to walk, not to mention broken bones, but don't worry about that. Plo held his arm under and around Anakin's back and walked with him. Anakin's arm was hung lightly over Plo's shoulders. Anakin limped and Plo kept him from falling. They took 20 paces in one direction, stopped, turned around and walked back and did it again. Plo was interchanging with other Jedi Masters. He flipped between Kenobi, Windu, and Fisto, who were each able to help Anakin with his physical therapy. It was a bit of a struggle, but Anakin was handling this with optimism. He had feared what Padme would say when she saw him, but she loved his soul. That's what mattered most to her. They obviously didn't show any PDA inside the temple, but they were given some privacy to be around each other in Anakin's medical room. Skywalker was still sleeping in Bacta, and because he was infused with the light side due to his pure heart, he was actually healing. Had he been draining himself with the dark side, he wouldn't feel or see such relief. He would be miserable, but in this scenario he was not. He was infused with the light. Because Yoda and Anakin were spending so much time with each other, the conversation of philosophy had come up. The two of them spoke about revenge and why Anakin shouldn't seek him. Despite his desires being human and even technically fair, they were not the Jedi way. The Order was seeking out a correct way of handling the Dooku incident. Of course, that wasn't until Dooku and Palpatine were found on Sereno by one of the representatives from the planet, one who leaked the images and sights to the galaxy. The people learned that Palpatine and Dooku were with each other in secrecy, and that they were murdered. It was a weird scenario, but it forced the Jedi task force Yoda was going to send to Sereno to kill Dooku to go to Sereno to investigate from a neutral standpoint. This was allowed by both the Republic and the Separatists. They would find that there was foul play at hand, a betrayal by Dooku's own assassin. However, there was proof that Palpatine and Dooku were working together. This sent the political realm of the galaxy into ultimate turmoil, and it forced the neutral systems to both include new systems but also begin forming their own military. Just a militia, nothing large but at least something defensible. Yoda and Anakin's conversations shifted slightly when it was revealed that Dooku was dead, but it didn't change their resolve. Yoda agreed that Anakin's desire to change the outcome of Dooku's life for his own personal vendetta was validated. However, as a Jedi, to kill Dooku shouldn't be out of one's desire for revenge. Rather, they should be doing it because he affected the lives of billions. A Jedi's desires are not inward. Anakin understood this, and because Anakin was so immobilized by the burned scars, he really actually took these lessons to heart. Spending so much time with the Grand Master was an important stepping stone in their relationship, and while Anakin wasn't back to training Ahsoka yet, he was training himself. So much of this recovery was self-determined. The Jedi wouldn't force Anakin back to the front lines, but Anakin wanted to be there. He wanted to persevere. He was a Jedi, not a hero, and Jedi always rise above their greatest challenges. Anakin's hair did start to slowly grow back, but it wouldn't ever be as lush as it once was. His walking was still unstable, but he was getting back into the swing of things. To perfect this, he demanded that a Jedi train with him, and so those who were helping him with walking would. Plo, Mace, Obi-Wan, or Fisto contributed to this, and it helped. It was kind of funny. Anakin could hardly walk on his own, but when it came to sparring, he was working at full strength, maybe even better than what he had before. There was something so different about him as a Jedi. It was like facing death head-on. Surviving that atrocity brought him completion. He understood what death was. He wasn't afraid of it, and he didn't reel from adventure. He just knew what was on the line. Anakin sat in this weird balance, and Yoda watched it all happen. He was proud of Anakin, and it was in this pride for Anakin that Master Yoda caved. Despite how much Anakin had emotionally changed into the Jedi he was always meant to become, he was still stressed. His men were fighting, even after Palpatine and Dooku's death, and his apprentice was still fighting. So to blow off steam, he was able to get Yoda, Fisto, and even Mace Windu to play some Sabacc with them. Did they like it? Not initially, but it grew on them. They weren't betting real credits, they were just having a fun time. And in this casual time together, they grew their bonds. They told stories, they laughed, and they enjoyed each other's presence in a neutral environment. It even had Anakin slapping Mace on the back because he was choking on Jawa juice after a funny story Master Fisto said. It was wholesome. A wholesome PP story. Sorry, couldn't resist. Outside of the good times inside the temple, the Republic and CIS were splitting up, literally. Grievous had a movement on his hands. Tarkin had a movement on his hands. There were two sides that wanted peace, and two sides that wanted to elongate the conflict. As a result of this split, the Trade Federation within the Senate received tariffs that forced the Federation to stop supporting the war, because the tariffs would have made them broke. Grievous was left with his forces, an entire army. and a whistleblower from the Separatist Council was able to inform the United Republic about the reserve forces in the Separatist arsenal. This allowed a Republic task force to detonate it so Grievous couldn't get his hands on it. In the aftermath, there remained a few factions. The United Republic, between the peaceful tribes of the CIS and the Republic, the warring factions on both sides, which were the Grievous Reform and the Tarkin Insurgents, not to mention the Neutral Systems Coalition, which was just kind of sitting there. This all set the stage for Grievous to bring the war back to the Republic. The Jedi did not side with Tarkin. However, they were not going to allow Grievous to continue fighting the galaxy. Anakin, because he was so focused on serving the people of the galaxy, convinced Plo and Fisto to join him on this endeavor, to do as Yoda taught him, serve the people, not work on personal vendetta. Because the Separatist government disavowed the military, Grievous was operating away from those systems. He conquered a few for personal enjoyment, and he had killed Asajj Ventress. He technically lost the duel, but his battle droids got the final blow, so in his books it was a win. Flying their T6 shuttle were Plo Koon, Kit Fisto, and Anakin Skywalker. The Jedi met up with a Marauder, who found the Separatist fleet. They moved in two groups. The Bad Batch targeted Admiral Trent's flagship, while the Jedi moved on Grievous, going in to make sure he died. Anakin, again, was very fragile, and Master Fisto had to help him walk to the halls. He had stints on his calves and one on his upper left shoulder. They walked Anakin through the vessel as the Bad Batch snuck into the reactor of Trench's flagship. This needed to be in time. If the Jedi couldn't get this done on time, then they could get caught in the Bad Batch's explosion. Anakin was allowed on this mission because he wasn't chasing vendetta. He was allowed on this mission because he believed they could stop Grievous and end this war together. Anakin and Fisto followed Plo to the bridge, after they narrowly avoided Separatist forces throughout the ship. Grievous was sitting on his throne, surprised by the Jedi presence. He told his commandos to kill the Jedi. Anakin, Fisto, and Plo all ignited their lightsabers. Because Kit had fought Grievous before, he went in against the general first, as Anakin and Plo steadily defended themselves from the droid sentries. The commando droids were cut down one by one, as Kit and Grievous lit the chambers. Anakin ran in, mimicking Fisto by using Form 1 against the droid general. Ironically, Form 1 was more difficult for Anakin to use than his typical lightsaber form because his typical one was much more aggressive. Plo, just before he engaged the droid general, was distracted by Magna Guards. He fended them off as they encircled him. Fisto was thrown back out of the fight, and this forced Anakin to handle Grievous in a one-on-one. Their blades collided at extreme speeds. Behind Grievous, his Magna Guards were struggling with two Jedi focusing on them. Anakin held his own, slipping away from Grievous and then jabbing at him, slicing through one of his arms. He slipped back, using his behind-the-back swing to parry Grievous, as he slid to the side, letting Grievous slash the panel. Anakin kicked forward and regretted immediately. His legs snapped outwards and he reeled in pain, dropping to the ground, avoiding a head strike from Grievous. Before Grievous could strike Anakin down, yellow electricity filled his back. Anakin threw his lightsaber like a spear into Grievous's chest and he dropped over. Plo ran over and helped Anakin off the ground. Just as he got to his feet, they got a message from Hunter. The bombs were laid. They were going to detonate in 3 minutes if they were ready. They were, and they evacuated the ship, running to their vessels and vanishing in the hyperspace as explosions ripped through the Separatist flanks. Just after they left, Tarkin's forces dropped out of hyperspace and started what would become the final battle of the Clone War, the Battle of Dara Belt. The political ramifications of Tarkin's little uprising and Grievous's rebellion would cause the United Republic to turn heel on the droid and clone army, but the neutral system members stopped this. They wouldn't pay for either of these armies, but they recognized that the clones were living beings and demanded that the Republic take care of them, which they accepted and eventually did. Tarkin would be imprisoned for rebelling against the Republic. Even though his actions were justified, he did rebel against their government. Anakin would continue to struggle with this recovery, and his skin would never be the same again. Despite the burn scars covering a majority of his body, he decided to cover them up with tattoos, just to add some flair to his body. He was able to eventually recover, but after his mission with Plo and Kit, he'd pick up right where he left off with Ahsoka's training. Because the Council had seen Anakin's bravery, they elected to make him a Jedi Master before the war was officially concluded by the United Republic. In the years that followed the end of the Clone War, Master Skywalker would accompany his young knight to her choosing ceremony, where she'd become a Jedi Master and continue the lineage. Anakin and Padme were still happily married but had no children. That would come later. Master Skywalker resided inside the High Council, but he also oversaw an extension of the Jedi Order on an outpost on Ilum. The Jedi Order was a little bit different internally. Anakin started a Sabacc League to kind of pass the time and have some more fun. The United Republic, on the other hand, stood tall. Mandalore never fell, and the galaxy was healing. Corporate conglomerates were paying the prices they should have paid years before, during Palpatine's rule, and the people were now finally getting the care they deserved. It was a peaceful time, one with a ruling government that represented its citizens, and an ever-expansive and ever-growing Jedi Order, one led by Jedi, like Anakin, who understood what the Force meant, and how to use it to inspire a galaxy now filled with hope. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to all of our patrons: General Wells, Ozpin, Darth Vitiate, Seju Jagger, Root36, Hunter Belden, Rosebird, Angel Dust, Alexander Reese, The Beginning and End, Django Fett Clone, Nick5098, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tib, CC2024, Gallivan Gaming, Tristan, Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Granite Debane, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Colin Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlinger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewa670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny DeGuin, Seth Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. E Gamer, Lord Callie, Youngling Slayer 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin003, Lord Draken, Fortis Legacy Star Wars, Erebus, Rex the Wolf, The Man with Few First Names, Darkseid46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. For supporting the channel, smash that like button. Let's talk about this story. So, in a way similar to What If Anakin Was Blinded by Dooku, this story is very much so a Anakin trial and tribulation story. I kind of wanted to make the parallel to Anakin healing much more efficiently because he's not using the dark side. I don't really have anything to back that up. I just thought it'd be kind of cool to add that element where Anakin heals more naturally because he's not infested with his dark side curse. For Anakin's recovery process, aside from using the light side to heal, I really wanted him to have a nice dynamic with Yoda. Throughout the Clone Wars, you see that dynamic kind of grow over the seasons. And of course, bringing Sabacc back from the beginning of the video so that, you know, you can have this fun, kind of really wholesome moment with Anakin, Mace, Fisto, and Yoda kind of playing Sabacc with each other. I think they would go for it once Anakin started to kind of come around, showing that he's not like dark side, showing that he's trustworthy, showing that he's got a heart of gold. I think that would really be a nice moment for all of them. So I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.